Hello everyone, this is Mike and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to look at how to convert a C# script in using .NET objects into a PowerShell script. So one of the things I see a lot out there when I'm looking at how to do things through .NET, and I did put a video up a few days ago about how to use how to take advantage of .NET objects in PowerShell when there's not a commandlet or something else to take advantage of. You have the whole .NET framework to potentially call from. Now the problem with that though is a lot of developers and programmers use .NET as well. So a lot of the syntax that you find out there is usually in C# format, including a lot of Microsoft's own documentation, their own usage examples. So it might be handy to take an existing C# script and pick out the parts of it and make it work within PowerShell. So we're in essence like rebuilding it, if you will, right? So what I found, and let me switch over to my VM here. What I found, if I bring this page up, and I'll throw this page in the description here, is when going down the rabbit hole from an earlier video that I did about using the get authorization groups method from the user principal object in .NET to get a list of a user's direct and nested group memberships, is that this method here doesn't always work. So I see a lot of people reporting bugs and issues and things like that with it that were having an undesirable effect, right? Uh, so so even though the research and the video that I did the other day on using .NET objects, it was a good research exercise of doing the research, finding the information, all of that. It was a good exercise. This particular method is probably not one you want to use in your environment. So that brings the question to ask, well, what would I do if I wanted to get a list of direct and nested group memberships for a user in Active Directory? So a lot of the research that I did led me to look at some other things. And so one of those things here, and I'll kind of just let me zoom in here a little bit, is this token groups property that exists on an object in Active Directory. Okay, so it's not a regular attribute that maybe a lot of you might be familiar with. So it's what's called a constructed attribute. So it holds security identifiers for groups, both direct and nested, that a user object belongs to. So it will not include distribution groups if you have those. It is strictly for security groups. And the fact that it is a constructed attribute means it doesn't have anything in it until you actually call it. So it's basically empty for the most part until it's read from. So the value is constructed, or I should say that the value is calculated when this particular property or this particular attribute is read from. Right now, looking at it though, one of the sample solutions here that I found to call it is from this page here, and I'll throw this page in the link, and I'll put a link for this in the description. Okay, so we could see here they're using some C# code in order to be able to call this. I apologize, I can't show it all on one screen here, but you guys get the gist here. So what I want to do is I basically want to take this C# code and I want to re-engineer it. So it's using PowerShell, and hence can be run inside of a PowerShell session as a script, or if you wanted to make like a function out of it, put it in a module, something like that. Okay, but kind of the starting place here is to at least get a script going. All right, so that's where I would like to begin here. So now with that being the case, let me zoom my browser here up a little bit just to make it a little easier for you guys to look at. Okay, so we look at the solution here, and in essence, what we're going to do is rebuild this. Okay, so it's starting off. with you know, laying out what I assume is the C sharp version of a function. Okay, so that's what I'm thinking this is. Get groups, and then it takes for an input SAM account name, so that would be like the username in a string format. Okay, so that's what I'm assuming there. So I'm not going to make the function out of it yet. I'll just leave it as a standalone script. I have, you know, earlier videos on how to make functions, how to make modules, you know, things like that. You all can reference those. But I am going to make a script that does take input, and we'll kind of use the same input name here. So I'll try to redo everything as close as I can, using their parameters, their variable names, stuff like that. So it's kind of an easy apples to apples comparison, if you will. Right. So with that being said, though, I am going to need an ISE session. I'll use the ISE for this. I'm on a domain controller right here, domain controller in my lab environment. So I don't have VS Code or Visual Studio Code on here to use, so I'll just use the ISE. And that is not the ISE. Hold on, bear with me. Helps if I know how to at least open my applications here. All right. So let's get the ISE going. What do we got for a zoom level here? Let me shrink this down a little bit. Try to get as much window in as I can. 160% zoom. Okay, that'll work. And so now we want to start building. Okay. Now, if any of you have watched me build scripts before, you know I kind of start, you know, pretty much the same thing where I throw in commandlet binding, and then I throw in a parameter block. Okay, and that's pretty much the beginning of anything that I use here. Now, what did they call theirs? Get group. So how about I just call this script? I'll just save it as. We'll do get group. So let's put C drive data. Let's do get dash groups. Okay, give it a good PowerShell style name. Verb noun. Um, which again, I mean, you can name the script whatever you like. That's just what I'm choosing. All right, so first thing we needed was a parameter. So the parameter would represent the user that we're going to go query. And we can call it SAM account name like they did there. All right, so we'll just cast that as a string and $SAM count name. Is that in the case that they did it? Not that it matters, but apples to apples, I guess. Okay, so we have that going. Now, the first thing that they're doing is it looks like they're creating a variable that's going to be a list object. So in PowerShell terms, I'm going to think this is the equivalent of PowerShell, I think, would be an array list. So basically what that's going to be is it's going to be a variable that you could add multiple objects into one at a time. Okay, so you can do a regular array or an array list. The reason why I'm going to do an array list is further down here in the code where they're adding to that. They're using an add method, and an array list in PowerShell also has an add method on it. A regular array, you don't put things in using, it doesn't have an add method. So you have to do something different like a plus equal to add things into it. So I figure, again, just to stay as near as we can, we'll just kind of do that. So that was uh, user user nested membership was the name of that. So that's a mouthful. All right, so let's kind of do that there. So we're going to need, like I said, we're going to need an array list. So we could do that by making an object here. So let's cast this as a variable. So $user nested membership equals new object system dot collections dot array list. So that line there will get us our array list that we're looking for. All right, and then later on we will use that. All right. So let's see. So what's next? So next here They are, it looks like, creating a new object from this directory entry. I'm going to assume that that's a constructor. Right? So I'm going to assume this is a .NET class, and they're basically creating an object and saving that object into this variable. So they're just describing var here, so they're declaring a variable. The variable name is domain connection. And inside of that variable, they're using a directory entry object is what's being put in there. All right? That's at least what I'm assuming. Okay, so again, I'm assuming, but let's kind of bear it out. So to know, in PowerShell, you can't just go with the class. You need to know more about it. So what I'll do is let's go over here. Let's throw something in search. I should have copied that into the clipboard. I did not. Hold on one sec. Copy. And throw that into paste. And see what we come up with. So we've got the directory entry class out of the system directory services namespace. All right, so we're going to crack that open. And so, yeah, so directory entry, that's what we're looking for, right? Yep, directory entry. Okay, so that does exist as a class out of this namespace right here, system.directory services. And go down in here and I want to go find the constructors. Constructors are how you put together an object out of that class. Okay, so we have a few different constructors, and each of them, if you notice, so you might be wondering, like, why is there like so many? Well, they each take different input. They each take different arguments. If you could see, like string, 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 authentication types. And if you open each one of these, it would tell you like what, like what those strings actually are. So this one here takes no arguments whatsoever. This one takes a string. This one takes 3 strings. So if I were to like crack that open, it would tell me what each of those strings were. One was the path, one was the username, one was the password. All right. So the one that they're using, the constructor that they're using, if you notice right here, it takes no arguments. So it's an empty argument list, right? So that's what I'm going to go with. Okay, I'm going to, again, match the same thing. All right. So the variable name was domain connection. So let's go ahead and let me steal that. So that would be $domain connection. And if we're going to use a constructor, again, we're doing the new object. New object, and what was it? Let's see. Let's go back here. It was, let's see. Oh, I'm in the constructor. Let's go back to the main page. It was, I need the namespace, which I don't remember. Okay, so system.directory services.directory entry. All right, so system.directory services.directory entry, singular. All right. And again, no arguments, so that's what we're going to go with. All right. Now, in fact, if you wanted to, as you kind of go through each line here, feel free to highlight the line and select the run selection part, and that will kind of set it down in the console here so you can kind of see what you're working with. So for instance, if I do now down in the console part of the ISE, if I do domain connection and just look at that variable, I can see that there's something in there. So this is the name of my Active Directory domain. It's chassis.tac.com. And I can also pipe this to get member to verify that I have the right kind of object. So it is a directory entry object. All right. So that's kind of step one. They're creating that. All right. Now, so the next thing is on it, they're setting the authentication type property. Okay, which, you know, we should verify to make sure that we have that. So if I look at the properties here, auditing, let's see. Hmm, I'm not seeing authentication type. That's funny, that should be there. These do look in alphabetical order. The one thing that usually gets me sometimes is they're not in alphabetical order. But let's see if we could put that into there. Okay, so let's see. So domain connection, so yes, that's the name of that variable. Dot authentication type, so it's setting the authentication type property. Yeah, let's see. Let me re-enumerate this. And let's look at all of the properties on it. So let's do select object property star. Yeah, there's authentication type. All right. So why that didn't show up in the get member, I've got no idea. It's why sometimes it's nice to look, you know, two different ways here. So again, what did I do on that? If I just bring up the previous command, select object property star, which you'll see me do this a lot. You could just do select star, and that'll show you all of the properties that are on, you know, the object that's in this variable. So if I just do this, I just see some default output. It's not showing me everything. So if I kind of do the select star, that does. All right. And I can see here that authentication type is set to a value of secure. All right. So let's see. So what were they doing in their sample? Authentication type equals. So they're already setting it to secure. Okay. Well, we already have that. So what I guess we could do is potentially, you know, just repeat that, I guess, if we wanted to do that. All right. So now what I might want to research here is this again, this is another type of object, right? So what I would probably go look here is throw that into a search. All right, and directory services dot authentication types. So it looks like that's an enumeration. So what that is, it's basically you're going to declare one of some set values. So the authentication type enumeration provides a type of authentication. Um, we could see like what the available options are, the fields. So anonymous, delegation, encryption, fast bind, and notice secure is one of them. Okay. So for an enumeration, what I would do is literally just use whatever the word is that I wanted, if I wanted to do that. Okay, so what I could do is take whatever that is. So we're doing domain connection dot authentication type equals, and in this case, secure. All right. So that would get that part done, and let's maybe make sure that that doesn't throw an error. Okay, that looks good. All right. So that's probably what I'm going to do is as I generate each line here, just probably run it one at a time just to make sure it's not throwing an error, you know, down in a console here. Kind of a crude form of debugging, but it works. Okay, so next, what do we got to do next? So we got that line, we got that line. Now, again, we're making a new object here. So this one is directory searcher, which looks like, again, an empty argument. Okay, so and the variable name is called Sam Searcher. So that's what we're going to go with. So that is from the directory searcher class from some namespace, right? So that's what we got to figure out. So let me just throw the variable in first. So that was Sam searcher, and that's going to be some type of new object, and it was directory. Also, if I can remember how to spell search. S-E. Good God, I'm having a spelling issue right now. Oh well, it's the downer. Okay, so anyway, directory searcher. I'm sure you guys are all laughing at me right now. Wouldn't be the first time I had a spelling issue. All right, so let's go search for that kind of object or that kind of class. And so directory searcher class out of system.directory services namespace. That's cool. That's the same namespace as earlier. System.directory services. All right, and directory searcher class. Let's see on the. It wasn't using any arguments, so let's see. Oh, perfect. Notice right here, you see how they have a constructor with no arguments on it. All right, so an empty argument list. So that's what we're going to use as well. Remember, the constructors are what you're using when you want to make an object out of a class. So you have all of these different constructors, each with different arguments on them. All right. So we're going to use the one with no arguments. Let's just keep it simple. All right. And remember, this was out of the system.directory services namespace. So let's go ahead and steal that from right there. Put that in. Let's close up the spaces a little bit. So system directory services dot directories. You know what? I am just going to directory searcher. Okay. I just want to tab complete it just to make sure it's spelled correct. So you can tab complete, the different, namespaces and class names. So that kind of makes sure your spelling is correct. Okay, so that gets that. So system directory services dot directory searcher. Okay, so next part. Let's see. So let's go back here. And it looks like we need to call a few different things here. So I'll tell you what, just to keep from flopping back and forth on the script, I'm just going to take these 3 lines and I'm just going to put them right here. They're not, I'm not actually going to use them, but they're just there as a reference for the moment. All right. So let's see. So we need to establish in this variable a domain connection. So this is calling the domain connection variable. So remember, we already have that defined up here. All right. So it looks like we're just going to be calling that. All right. So in this case, we'll take our line here, Sam searcher, and the property there is search root, and that would be our domain connection. All right, like so. Then we have this one right here. So Sam searcher dot filter. Right, and it looks like they're setting it to a string, which, let me go pop back over here. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, just wanted to make sure there's nothing else around it. Right, so samsearcher.filter equals, and then it looks like they're doing an LDAP query of some sort, okay, which is going to start with so the whole thing is like a string. So you read it from beginning to end, and kind of like the whole thing is a string, but the actual string is going to be starting in a parentheses with some type of like LDAP comparison in it. Okay, so in this case, we'll do parenthesis, Sam account name equals, and then that would probably be whatever account name I supplied up here as a parameter. So that's what I'll literally just put right there. And then close the parenthesis, and then close the quote. So this whole string right here is basically being sent to Active Directory. You know, that's going to be like your LDAP query, if you will. And then their final line here, SAM searcher properties to load dot add. So that's calling the properties to load property, and then that's calling the add method, and then they're adding display name into there. All right, so we could probably just steal this whole thing line for line right here. Just make sure we're doing $ in front, and maybe get rid of the extraneous spaces. We don't need them. So that's making sure the display name is going to be retrieved from this information as well. All right, so I don't know why they might want to do that, but that's basically what they're calling there. All right, so that should, let me get rid of those lines of code. So that should button that part up. Let's go back here. So the next line is they're getting a result, and that's calling the find one method from SAM searcher. So first of all, let's see if that actually exists. So we didn't test any of these lines here. So let's go ahead and do a quick test on that. All right, now, unfortunately, I'm not running this as a script right yet as I test each line. So I'll show you why that's going to matter in a moment here. So let me first of all run that line. Okay, so that ran without any error. And then if I wanted to down here, I could ask it SAM searcher and see what it actually kind of gives me for some output here. Okay, so I could see, so remember, we're going to further define search route, which, let's see, yeah, so that has a property there, so that matches. Filter, so filter, yep. And then properties to load. Let's see, so I don't see that. Oh yeah, right here, properties to load. Yeah, right there. Okay, so those things exist. Okay, cool. So now let's run each of these lines to kind of populate those things. All right, so we ran that. Ooh, one of them gave me some output. That 0 there. I might want to deal with that after. So that's display name. So I might want to take that and do an out null, but we'll learn that later. So let me just throw a comment there of maybe a null, because I might want to do that. I don't necessarily want output from running these commands. And sometimes when you call like add methods or remove methods or stuff like that, sometimes they do provide some form of output on the screen. All right. Okay. So now what did we want to do? So we were calling this SAM result. Oh yeah, that's right. I wanted to see if SAM searcher had a find one method on it, which I'm pretty sure it does. So to find the methods, you can call the variable. So we already have SAM searcher defined. Pipe it over to get member. And we could see, yep, there's a find one method right there. All right. And it does take no arguments. All right. So it's an empty argument list. So that's perfect. All right. So that looks like we could call that. And whatever that output is going to put into this variable called SAM result. All right. So we'll just basically steal this line right here and we'll fix it. All right, so that'll be right here. So $SAM result equals $SAM searcher dot find one. All right. It's one of the things I do like more about PowerShell than I do C#. If you look at the code here, once you're like down established in here, it's tough to know what's variable and what's not. because they all just look like words. Whereas in PowerShell, the variables always have dollar signs in front of them, right? So it's kind of easier sometimes to know what you're working with. You know, you might establish domain connection up here, but then when you go down into the code lower, you might not remember what it was. Like, oh yeah, I wonder what this is. Well, that was the variable that was defined up here. Or user nested membership, that's defined up here, but then it's not called until you get like down here, right? So sometimes that might be tough to remember, especially if it's not your own script. So that is one, perk that I like about PowerShell. If you need something, all right? Um, okay, so we got that going, and let's make sure again that this works. So we'll take that line and just run it. And ooh, there we go. So the is invalid. Well, since I'm running each line of code on its own, this didn't have something in it yet. Okay, so if I wanted to just to do something here, dollar Sam account name equals, and I'll just throw a user in here. I have a user called user2 that I'm ultimately going to play with here. User2 is a member of a few different groups here. Uh, Users, global one, sales, and all of those are nested. So the sales group is nested into sales data read, and global one, which user2 is a member of, is nested into this universal group right here, universal one, and that is nested into this domain local right here. All right, so it's testing two nested levels, if you will. So user one's a member of global one's a member of universal one, and universal one's a member of DL universal nested. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to temporarily put a value in there and just we'll declare that down in this console here. Rerun this line, and now this line should work. Cool. Okay, so let's go see Sam result. Has some stuff in it. All right, so I see user2, users. All right, so anyway, so it's got stuff including the display name. All right, it's got some other things in there as well, but yeah, so at least the script wanted to add. All right, so that's rocking. Okay. So now it looks like we have a big old if construct here. So if SAM result is not equal to null, okay, that's what I believe this comparison operator is. That's not equal, right? And null in PowerShell, we have a variable for that. That would be $null. So it's basically making sure that there's something in there, right? Um, so we could basically kind of do the same thing here, where we'll put that in. So if, again, it would be dollar SAM result, and that is not a PowerShell comparison now. So not equal would be -NE, and PowerShell has a variable for null, which is $null. Then we have our script block. So that would be whatever code we want to do. In this case, provided SAM result has something in it. Okay, so SAM result is not equal to null. Null is a special value that means it's empty. So if this did not produce like an actual user, then I don't want to do any of the rest. Okay, so the rest is only going to run if there's something in there. So maybe we'll throw closing, just so we know that was the close. All right, so now let's go back, see what we got. Okay, so the first thing here is they're calling the SAM result get directory entry method again with an empty argument list, and storing the result in a variable called the user, all right, which is interesting. So SAM result dot get directory entry. So that should be a method that's on the object that we produced up here. Right? Again, we could go verify that. $SAM results pipe to get member, and it has a get directory entry method. Okay, so it's just looking like it's doing an ADSI query. If anybody's used like the utility ADSI edit for modifying, kind of the low-level Active Directory data, ADSI edit's a neat little utility. It's kind of like a reg edit, reg edit to edit the registry, ADSI edit to kind of do a low-level edit of Active Directory. Especially if you need to go in and modify like the configuration partition, the schema partition, stuff like that. Okay, so let's see. So we are going to do that as well. All right. So, and it's in a variable called the user. Man, sounds weird. All right. So let's go grab that line, and that'll be put there. So we'll cast that as a variable, the user, and we're calling the method samresult.getDirectoryEntry. All right. Which again, I could run on its own, make sure it works. Cool. Okay. Now we're taking the user variable, whatever's in there, and we're calling refresh cache, and we are providing an argument here of token groups, and in C# you have to declare it. So you're telling it that that's a string coming in. I don't think we need to do that. How we call methods in PowerShell is a little different. You don't have to cast, or you don't have to type every object coming in, as in specify the type of object that it is. So I think we can just do token groups and get away with it, okay? Because that's ultimately the property that we want. Remember, that was that computed property. So we have to call it in order to actually have data in there, all right? So that's what I'm hoping for, all right? So now this user that we created in the variable the user, pipe that to get member, and yeah, what were we calling? So you can see the information that's in there. All right. So yeah, so we do have some stuff. So let's go and refresh cache off of that, and then provide the argument here, token groups. All right. Okay. So let's refresh cache. It's always good when a tab completes. And I think I could just put in that string into there. All right. So let's go ahead and run that. I didn't throw an error. That's good. Okay, so now we want to loop through. It looks like we want to, so it looks like it's setting up a for each. So as in, we're assuming multiple things are going to be in this token groups property. And we're going to want to loop through each one of them because it looks like it's going to be a byte array is what's actually in there. Okay, and they're using a variable called result bytes. Okay, so we can actually verify that. We could take because we have this basically declared right now, right? So I could go and test that out to verify that there's actually like multiple things in there if I wanted to, right? So down here, let me take that. So it was dollar the user dot properties token groups and close that. All right, so that's what it's grabbing. Oh, and it looks like that does have stuff in it, which looks like a whole bunch of byte arrays. Ultimately, those will get converted into SIDs, and that'll be the SIDs of the groups that this user is a member of. So if that just looked like a bunch of numbers to you, each one is its own byte array. So if I just pipe this over to like select first one, you can see it's just, this is the, make this a little bigger here. That's the output of one byte array. And then pipe this to get member, and you can see that it's in fact a byte array. All right. So that's what it looks like. The output's coming out of there. All right. So we're going to want to work with that. Okay. So it looks like that that makes sense there. All right. So let me just steal that code there because we're going to need that in a moment. Okay. Just put that there as a placekeeper. And then they were using a variable called result bytes. Let's grab that. So we were doing a for each, and it was dollar result bytes in the user properties. Probably get rid of that space there. Token groups. Okay. And then we're going to open up a script block, close the script block. And that was, oops, closing for each. Okay, so now we want to run for each result that comes back. So this produces multiple. So we want to put the first result in here and then work with it. So inside this for each, we're going to use this variable to represent each byte array that's coming back. And a byte array in this case is mentioning each individual group. So the byte array is going to be converted into a SID, and the SID we're then going to look up to find the group, is basically what this code is doing. All right. So right here it first starts off with another type of object here. So this is a security identifier object. And if I, again, kind of go look here, I could see security identifier, which security identifier class. So this is out of system.security.principal namespace, it looks like. Cool. And let's see, constructors. Okay, so on the constructors here, we'll take the first one. It takes a byte array object, which is what we got. And it also takes an argument of int32. So let's go see what that is. So we open up, so we got our byte, right? And then we have an offset. So the byte offset to use as the starting index in binary form. Okay, so so they provided arguments for here, and notice you got result bytes, so that was the byte array, the first entry from the byte array, and then they're using an argument of 0. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing. Okay, so it's going into a variable called $SID, right? Or in a variable called SID. Let's put it that way. All right. So let's see. So let's do this. So we've got $SID, and in PowerShell, again, we're going to do new object, and it was system.security.principal security identifier, I believe. Let's see how good my memory is. Let's go back. system.security.principal.security identifier. All right, cool. We got it. We got it. Okay, and then we wanted the arguments. The first one would be the variable $result bytes, which we had defined up here. So this would be the first object out of this, which was producing multiple, and then the argument of 0. All right, and get rid of the spaces there. All right, cool. So that's got that. Okay, now what's the next line? All right, we got SID searcher, which is calling a new object from directory searcher. So we already have that defined, don't we? Directory searcher, where is that? Oh yeah, it's up here. And yeah. Yeah, so that's in the variable SAM searcher. Okay, so it looks like we're just going to use the same thing to make it is the same class, except it's being put in a different variable now. All right, so that's what that is. Okay, so they're defining a variable, and we're going to do the same thing. Okay, let me give myself some white space here. Okay, so directory searcher we used up here, if you remember. So see this line right here? So what we'll do is we'll throw, make a new variable called SID searcher, and we'll do the same thing that that we just did earlier. Like so. Okay, so we have another object, a different object this time, for that directory searcher. Okay, and then we're going to use that to specify a few different arguments this time, if you remember these from earlier here. So let me bring that over and just put those there temporarily. So if you remember, we created the searcher and then defined a bunch of arguments to it, and then called it. So we're going to do the same thing here. $SID searcher .search root. So we'll still use that that domain connection variable that we have. We had that earlier up here, and we defined that up there. All right. Then the filter is going to be a little different. So in this case, they're searching for object SID. Then we want the SID so we want the SID object, so that would be here, but we want the value part of it. Okay, so it looks like what we're going to do, I don't think I need the quotes for that. So object SID equals, however, I can't just do $SID because it wants the value, right? That's what we had. So .value. And when you are in a set of double quotes and you want a part of a variable, not the whole variable, you have to wrap it up inside of what's called a sub-expression. So that's what I'm doing here. So that you have $sign on the outside, a parenthesis, and then the variable, and then the part of the variable that you want. Right? So that's called a sub-expression. You need to do that when you're inside double quotes. Let's get rid of the semicolons here. Those don't need to be there. And then lastly here, SID searcher properties to load. So we're assuming that there's a name there. All right, and we're going to go grab the name property. All right, cool. Okay, and then we're doing a SID result, which is SID searcher, and then calling that find one method from earlier. There we go. So again, the biggest thing is you're bringing these over, you got to make sure you add the dollar signs because that's how PowerShell calls the variable. So this would be a new one, SID result. Let's see, what were they doing here? If SID result equals null, doesn't equal null, then we go add it to user nested membership. All right. As a string, the result of SID result.property. All right. So I think though, before we get there, we are going to just make sure that this is spitting out here. All right. So let's grab that. I think I already did that. Yeah. Okay. So we have that, and let's see here. So now's probably a good time. Let's get that out of there. Um, And without fine-tuning the result, I'm not going to put it into this array list yet. I just want to see if it just spits out like a bunch of stuff. So let's go ahead. I'm going to save this script. Let's just open a separate PowerShell console. And we save this into C:\data, get groups. Get groups, same account name, user2. And okay. Spits out a whole bunch of stuff, which which I am getting some form of output here. Okay. Um, oh, I think I see what it is. Okay, I'm not going to put each result in the variable. So bear with me one sec. I am going to take that and just have it spit out the raw results. All right. Oh, I did notice though that all those zeros, we probably want to do something with those. So let's see. All right, cool. So we got some stuff. Um, so I didn't store it in those variables. Instead, I just let it spit out to the console. And if we notice here, um, we could see, like for instance, there's the users group, there's the nested, the sales, data, universal, domain, global. So it's got all of the direct memberships. So the user2 is a member of users, sales, and global, and domain users, and the rest of these are all nested. All right, so it is okay. So it is grabbing stuff. So that's cool. So that's a good way to just test it out here. So now let's go. I'm just hitting Control Z to go back. So now we could take that result that we're getting here. And let's see, what was the script doing? Just stick with the script. And if the result adds something in it, we're going to add it to user nested membership. All right, so that's what we're doing. So let's do that. So if $SID result does not equal null, we'll do an open. Get rid of that. Okay, so that is its matching end there. Okay, so SID result not equal null. Let's see, we want dollar user nested membership dot add, and what are we adding? We wanted dollar $SID result dot properties. Specifically in properties, we want the name property of the group. Let's get rid of that. Okay, just kind of looking to see what their logic is here. Dot properties, we want the name property. I assume that's a variable reference. That and maybe one more. I think I actually have too many parentheses here. Okay, so we have that. So that should now add everybody in. And then we want to ultimately output that. So if we wanted to, so again, this is now back into the if construct. So that was all in the for each. So that would happen. So this would loop right here for each group that a user is a member of, direct and indirect. And then all of that ultimately stored in here. And then ultimately we'll just output that variable, which in the script, in C# you do that by doing return. You could actually put that there, return, but we don't need to do that. In PowerShell, just the $ means enumerate the group memberships. So let's do a save on this, and let's see if that actually works. Okay, users, universal. So it's got the names of the groups. I got these outputs though, which I'm not exactly happy about. Let's see if we can fix that. So we wanted to, let me pop up here and let's do an out null for that particular line because I think that's what was making some of that output. Let's save that. Let's see if that cuts down on a bit of the extraneous output. No, it didn't. All right. Let's see. Let's see, maybe. I am just flat out guessing here right now. We want to see if we can figure out. Okay, that wasn't it. See if we can figure out which of these lines is doing that extra output here. Let's see. Well, that's ruining it. Okay. Try saving that. Let's see if we're back to where we were. Okay. So we got something. I wonder if it's down here. It might be. Bear with me one sec. And if we don't get it, we'll leave that as something to figure out down the road here. Getting there. All right. 0, 1, 2. Oh, it's the array list. It's the array list right here. Out null. Let's see if that fixes it. There we go. Got it. Cool. So if you're wondering what this is, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, when you add to an array list, each time you add to it, you get an index number of what position it was added in. So you could actually use that output for something, right? If you took the 7, you could maybe have spit out like, hey, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you take and add a number to it because the first one in is position 0. So there's 8 things into there. So you could maybe use that, for your reference if you wanted to. But anyway, so that was that. So that got the code completed here. Let me see if I can show this all on one screen here. Let me zoom it down a little bit. And likewise, I will take the code and I will paste a link for it up in the description of the video if you want to check it out there. That would be there for you as well. So anyway, so that was converting a C# script into a PowerShell script. Thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.